All right, I'm hoping that these all go together. So I am making a recording for the specific hormones along with the menstrual cycle, kind of doing like the drawing on the board that Professor Cohen had done in class because I thought it was super helpful. The first thing that I do want to do is kind of have in the corner here, let's see, where do I want to put it? I'll put it over here, which helped me was this graph of the specific hormones in their process in the cycle, or at their stage in the cycle. So first phase, which is menstrual phase, the second phase, which is follicular, and then the third phase, which is luteal. Control. That's not a straight line, but that's all right. You get the point. These are going to be the different phases. So menstrual cycle, which is days 1 to 6, follicular phase, which is days 7 to 14, and luteal phase, which is days 14 to roughly 28, as stated in class. It kind of depends on each individual. And I'm going to try and keep these colors the same to make life a little bit easier. But red square will be estrogen. Blue is going to be follicle stimulating hormone. Purple will be progesterone. And this pretty green color will be luteinizing hormone. So for each hormone, we're going to go through see when they peak when in the cycle. It kind of helps to visualize a little bit better in regards to what these hormones are doing, and then we can kind of talk a little bit what they do for the body and the uterine lining. So first part of the phase, menstrual phase, we said that estrogen levels are low, and they peak just before follicle stimulating hormone peaks. So estrogen levels are low, and then they kind of rise and peak in the follicular phase and come down low again. And then after in response to the estrogen levels being low, then follicle stimulating hormone begins to rise, and it peaks just after estrogen peaks, and it's not that high. So it's a little bit past estrogen's peak. And luteinizing hormone is what causes the follicle to leave, the mature follicle to leave the cell, which is then called the egg. And that peaks also pretty much the same as follicle stimulating hormone, but it's going to be, a pretty significant amount. Just past peak of estrogen. And then progesterone is created by the corpus luteum after the egg is released from the follicle. And the job of progesterone is going to be to complete the thickening of the uterine lining and hopefully anticipation of fertilization. So that comes after corpus luteum secretes it and is kind of peaks somewhere in there and comes back down to base level. And that's what you got right there. All right, so first things we're going to talk about is actually, estrogen. And we're going to kind of go through, after seeing that, which helped me, we're going to go through kind of what she was talking about in regards to where these are being secreted, what they're doing. So the first phase is the follicular phase. And so we're going to use anterior pituitary is going to be, what color do we want? Let's do pink. Might be hard to see, but I hope you guys can see it. So we have, oh, that's not bad at all. Okay, so we have here the anterior pituitary. Now the anterior pituitary, in reaction to these low levels of estrogen, are going to begin to secrete follicle stimulating hormone. And this goes down to, actually, I'm going to use different colors for the anatomy. That way we can keep them intact here. We'll use pink again. So you have a bunch of these follicles that need to be matured prior to ovulation. So the follicle stimulating hormone comes down to these, helps these grow. And as these are starting to grow, they start to release, oh God, we'll get it one day. They begin to release estrogen. And once they reach the peak levels, it comes back up to the anterior pituitary and says, hey, we have enough of this. We're mature enough. You don't need to do that anymore. Which is then, so shortly after the peak of maturation of the follicle, there's enough estrogen where we no longer need follicle stimulating hormone, which is why this peaks just after the peak of estrogen. And then what happens after that is once there is some rising levels of estrogen, so stimulating hormone is released, we have some levels of estrogen, and what it also does is it will also stimulate the anterior pituitary. We'll draw another route here. So before it actually finally matures, it comes back up here as well. And it says, hey, we need some of this luteinizing hormone to come down to help release the follicle from the cell. So once this comes down and reaches the cell, once it has been fully matured, wrong color yet again, oops, you get the point. The egg is then released due to the peak of luteinizing hormone. And I'll draw this cell over here. So this egg is then, oh, I realized I've been in this way the whole time. Luteinizing hormone and everything peaking releases the egg from the ova. That's not the right word. Releases the cell from the follicle. Now, once this is released, there it is. Then we have one cell there, and then you have the kind of collapse thing with like, oh no, we're dying follicles in there. And because they are dying, they then secrete progesterone. And the progesterone is what completes the thickening of the uterine lining. So that's kind of the way that I was able to understand kind of somewhat. I hope I remember this. But yeah, that is the hormones, what they do, and how they're secreted and when they're secreted.